Good morning and welcome to Kramer's Corner with Daily Technical Update. It is Friday 25th of October and today we'll have a look at Novo that was about 1.15% lower yesterday, and it has actually resumed downtrend after trying to really get back above this support resistance line here at 819.70. It actually got back above, but it failed to follow through. And the RSI is still negative, no divergence on the daily RSI, indicating likely lower levels. And if we're looking at the weekly chart, I actually showed this a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago or so, where it has formed on weekly chart this shoulder-like pattern with a declining neckline, and that will hurt the performance a little bit, in my view. When the neckline is declining instead of rising. But if we add, and you could also do that, if we add the volume indicator to it, we can also see what's actually going on. The volume has been declining slightly over the development of this shoulder pattern. There was some uptick here on the sell-offs, so it's actually confirming that the sellers are more or less in control, and now there's potential down to 742, maybe even lower, down to around this consolidation area here. It is written in Danish, I'm sorry about that. Consolidation area with potential down to 641. Now, I'm not quite sure we'll get all the way down there. We have the 100 moving average here on the weekly coming up, giving some support, but we could dip down to 700. So a little bit bleak outlook for Novo Nordisk. The competitor Eli Lilly is still holding on a little bit. It is still holding on, be above 883, which seems to be kind of a pivot level. It actually dipped a little bit below here, back here in September, but it is still holding on. However, RSI is actually negative sentiment, so there is a downside risk that it could drop down to test and let me just add that line. I think we will see down to around the lower part of the cloud area here, around 858.80, and that is the risk at the moment for also Eli Lilly. So the weight loss companies, two biggest weight loss companies, are a bit of struggling at the moment. On the S&P 500 index, and let's just zoom in here on the daily chart, we can see it is it closed a little bit higher yesterday, but not much, 0.2%, but it closed back above 5,800. There's still a risk of a correction unfolding. There's divergence on the RSI, as we can see here. So there is a risk of a divergence unfolding, possibly down to 5,717 area. Key support 5,674. However, the Nasdaq 100 is still holding itself above the 20,041. Tesla's plus 20% rise yesterday helped the indices a little bit. So let's see if it can follow through today. Here on Friday towards the end of the week, and then we can catch up on Monday to see what does the overall market look. But there is some volatility, no question about it, due to all the earnings coming in, and we can see here there's a little bit of insecurity in the market in which direction we should move. But the bullish trend on the daily chart on Nasdaq 100 is still intact. EUROSTOXX 50 still holding on above the 49.07. That is key support, but basically trading sideways. Really needs to get back above 49.87 to resume uptrend. DAX index closed back above the 19,400 level, but could still come under pressure. And pre-market it is slightly lower, but still above 19,400, as we can see here on the GER40 CFD. It's still above that level, but let's zoom in a little bit so we can see what's actually going on. Hovering around. We are in a correction phase, and there is divergence on the RSI, meaning that the uptrend is fairly stretched. We had a bearish engulfing there, so indicating top and reversal, but let's see how much of a reversal it is. If it takes out the lows here from a couple of days ago, 19,299, well, then we could see a push down to 19,000 level, where we have some support coming in. The Amsterdam index, well, it is still holding on the RSI. The 40 level is still holding on, bouncing from it, despite the fact that it closed below 892, meaning we are in a bearish trend, lower lows and lower highs and lower lows again. Struggling to get back above. It is back above, but if we get another move down, we could see it down to 878. The CAD index, it is still the 74.64 key support that should be observed. The Swiss market, well, 12,119, tested it yesterday. 2 days ago. Still holding on above it. That is key. If it closes below that, well, then we could see a correction lower. If it moves back above 12,250, then the 12,348 resistance could once again being tested. At close above that, well, then we are in for a bullish move. Euro dollar seems to be bouncing now at the support here around 107.77. Dipped it below a couple of times, but the strong bullish move yesterday could indicating a bounce, where we also have divergence here, and we can clearly illustrate that with drawing a trend line. Let's see here. You can see it is slightly rising, the values, meaning we are in an exhaustion mode, and I think we could see a bounce up to 108.75 level, where there's some resistance, but we could see going into next week, could see a bounce up to the 38.2 retracement and the 100 moving average at 109.34. However, if it takes out the lows here from a couple of days ago at 107.60, well, then there's a downside potential to 106.65. The euro sterling, well, it's still can't really make up its mind, but holding on above the 83, which is key. Another break below 83, well, then we're looking at 82.30, maybe even lower. But for now, if it breaks above this falling trend line, which is not the strongest one, you have to be aware of that, but we could see a push up to around 84 level. Cable also in maybe rebound modes, just bouncing off, testing the 101.29 a couple of times, didn't get it all the way through, as you can see here, a few pips above. If we get a break higher now, about 130, well, there's potential up to 131, where we have a little bit of resistance, but we have the 55 moving average still rising, that 100 also rising after now. I think we'll see a bounce. If it takes out 129, then we are looking around 128, which is also around where the 200 moving average will come up and give some support. The RSI is still negative sentiment, no divergence, indicating we could dip lower, but let's see. Keep an eye on 129. That could be crucial here the next couple of days going into next week. Dollar yen, well, it was rejected at 153, as we talked about yesterday, setting back a little bit, giving some support here at the 200 moving average. We could see a little bit further setback, maybe down to the 100, but the RSI is in positive sentiment and no divergence, indicating a likely higher level. And if it takes out 153.10, then actually 153.15, I would say, which is spiked just a little bit above. There's potential up to 154, maybe even 155, 155 and a half. Key supports 149.40. If it takes out that, well, maybe the entire picture could be changed. But for now, we are still in a bullish trend on dollar yen. Euro yen also bullish trend, positive sentiment, no divergence, indicating likely higher levels. If it can take out 165, once again the peak here from the other day, then we could see a push towards this. We're not really any resistance until around 168, to be honest. Whether we will get up there is debatable, but it is possible if it can close above the cloud and above 165. Aussie yen, well, it was rejected at 101.75. Setting back a little bit, testing this falling trend line here in this very short term little triangle pattern. If it can bounce off it, which the RSI positive indicates that it could, it needs to take out 101.75, then there's potential higher above 102.5. But it seems to be a little bit of a struggle. If it moves back below 99.40, well, then it is resuming downtrend. Sterling yen, well, still holding on above the 196 support, and there is still potential up to around 199.50 level. There's minor divergence, as we can see, so it is a little bit of a stretch for sterling yen, but that is at least what the potential says, or the picture says, that there's potential up to 199.50. A break back below 196 and a close below, well, then it could slide lower to the 195, 193, maybe even, but the 200 moving average will give it a little bit of support. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 196 being tested either today or tomorrow. But it's not the strongest support, but it could be tested here the next couple of days. It is a little bit indecisive, despite the fact we are in a bullish trend and there is potential higher. Aussie dollar, well, it's trying to get back below 66.20, still in this support area here around the 200 moving average, 66.20, dipping below once again. If it takes out the 66.14 from the other day, that's the low from the other day, we could see a push down to what's 65, 67, 70 level, where there's some minor support. If it moves back above 66.5, well, then I think we'll see a push up towards 67.25, maybe even 67.40. It is a little bit stressed on the downtrend, but could dip lower. The RSI is indicating that. So, but I think we will not see it much below 200 moving average. But it's not unlikely, especially if it dips below 66.14, to keep on that level. Dollar Canada pushing higher. Towards 139, 139.50, maybe even the previous peak here. I think we will see that being reached within a couple of days. But as we can see, the RSI is getting a little bit stressed. But we should respect the trend, and the trend is up. And I would say if it stays above 138.12, 138.10, always subtract a little bit, then we could see a correction down to around 137.50, maybe even lower. But for now, the trend is bullish, likely higher levels. Sterling Canada bounced off the 55 moving average, back above the trend line here, rising trend line that it dipped below. It didn't close below, but it dipped below. So it's still in this triangle-like pattern that it needs to really break out of for any meaningful direction. RSI positive, minor divergence, but if it can get back above 60 threshold, then I think we'll see higher levels on Sterling Canada. Moving on to EUR/Swiss, 93.33. Support, key support here seems to be, I would actually expect it to be 93, but it's above here. If it takes out 93.30, well, then I think we'll see a dip below 93 and possibly even lower. Currently, it's trying to get back above the the rising trend line here, but I think we could see it push another push towards these supports here. So keep an eye on that. If it does get back above the rising trend line, well, then there's potential up to the falling trend line here. And if it breaks above that one, well, then we are looking at 95. But at the moment, it seems more likely that we will have a push lower on Euro Sterling. Euro Swiss. Dollar Swiss. Dollar Swiss. I still can't really get away from this 786 retracement here at 86.69. Has been spiking above a couple of times. It seems to me that maybe we are, the uptrend here is stretched a little bit and we could see a potential lower. So what I will do, I will add a Fibonacci to it and say, okay, there is just to give some guidelines to what we could see. So a possible setback to around 86 or 85.77, around this 38.2 retracement, if it can't take out the spike here from a couple of days ago at 86.86. If it can do that, then we're looking at 87.30, 87.50 level. And finally, the dollar index, when it comes to the FX market, dollar index, well, it actually formed a bearish engulfing yesterday after spiking a couple of times above 104.25, which is not the strongest resistance really, but this is a top and reversal pattern. So now I think we will see a correction kicking in, and that has been one hell of a ride. Oh, it didn't stick, sorry. That, what? It won't stick there? Oh, is it just me? There we are. So there is actually a massive correction potential. There is some support here around 103.36. I will actually adjust that. Say, well, that is these lows there, 103.25. That we could see a test. If it breaks below that, well, then we're looking at the 38.2 at 102.67. For further upside, and there is a potential to do that because the RSI is still in positive sentiment with no divergence. Of course, it's in positive sentiment, but there's also no divergence, indicating we could see the top and reversal bearish engulfing here being cancelled. If it does that, a close above 104.41 is required. If it does that, well, then there's potential up to 104.85. And moving on to gold. Gold, oh, need to adjust that a little bit. Sorry about that. Gold could be in a correction phase. There is divergence on the RSI. As you can see, the value here is lower than over here. So the uptrend is a little bit stretched. But also, as we talked about yesterday, I would use this candle there, which is this bearish candle here. I will use this as my guide. I will use this as a trading range. If it takes it out to the upper side, meaning if it breaks above as 27.59 and make a new high, then we are looking at 2800 plus. If it takes out the low of that candle at 2708, well, then I think we'll see a correction down to test the lower rising trend line and the 61.8 retracement at 26.62. So we use that as a guide for direction, breakout direction. The silver, not the future, but the silver spot is in a correction phase, but there's no divergence on the bullish RSI, positive RSI, indicating we're likely to see higher levels on silver with potential up to 35.5. But for now, we could see a little bit of correction. Well, we're very close to the 38.2, but there is a risk down to the 61.8, just around 32 level. On copper, can't really make up its mind. It's just basic trading sideways, so I'll just repeat myself. 429.35. If it takes out that, well, then there's potential down to around 420. If it takes out, and I will use this spike up there as my guide. If it takes out 445.70, well, then there's potential up towards 460, 470 again. Crude oil, well, it's basically just hovering around this kind of pivot line here at 71.50, 53. Can't close above, and as long as it can't close above, there's not much upside potential. But if it takes out that and closes above and can take out the spike up there at 72.33 yesterday, there is potential higher because the RSI is still at a positive sentiment. But it is a bit fragile. If it slides back, taking out the lows here from about a week ago at 68.72, well, then downtrend will be resumed, and RSI is likely to support that picture. Same picture on Brent Crude, really. The 75.85 seems to be a resistance, needs to close above that for upside potential. Otherwise, it is likely to slide lower, despite the fact that we do have RSI in a positive sentiment. But it's really struggling at the moment. US 10-year Treasury yield, a little bit of setback. Still in a positive sentiment on the RSI and no divergence, indicating likely higher levels. We could see a push towards the 428, 430, but there is some support here at 414, and also the 200 moving average giving a little bit of support. But a little bit of a setback is not uncommon, but I think we'll see it pushing towards 430 here going into next week. The 2-year Treasury yield closed yesterday above 406 resistance, and could push higher. There's no divergence on the positive RSI, so there is potential higher for the 2-year yield. I'm not quite sure we'll get all the way up to 430, 428, but at least there is potential. So there's not really much strong resistance until then, but I think that would be a little bit of a stretch. We have the 100 moving average coming down. They're kind of putting a lid on, but I think that could at least be tested, and then maybe we could see it set back and where it tries to dip back below the 4%. The EuroBund future that has bounced off the 132.73 support. You can see it dipped below a couple of times, but we are in a bearish trend, and there is negative sentiment on the RSI, no divergence indicating likely lower levels on the EuroBund future. And also, if this double top like pattern should play out, there is potential down to below 132 and maybe even lower in this consolidation area here. For EuroBund to establish a bullish trend, it needs to close above 134.25. All right, that's all for today. Have a nice day and a nice weekend. Talk to you again.